Thank you so much, Elliot. And to everyone listening, both inside GatherTown, to the Zoom link, and to all the people who watch this in the future, thank you for the time, attention, creativity, and devotion you've brought to this conference. We really started thinking about this conference almost six months ago, and watching the idea evolve and watching the ability to gather online evolve has been absolutely incredible. And so I would not be, I don't want to say anything first, except that everything you saw here today has been made by the incredible effort of Elliot, who has basically foregone decades of sleep in order to bring all of this to fruition, and his incredible teammates at CUNY, who also have been able to organize a world-class conference on a shoestring budget. And I think it's really a testament to the power that we as young people, we have. I had a chance to meet Greta actually in December 2019. I went to the COP25 climate change conference. And for a long time, as a personal sort of interest, I always thought climate was one of the two unifying activities or challenges that could bring humanity together, the other being alien invasions. And today, we don't see any aliens on the horizon yet, although there might be signs in the far distant galaxies, but the climate crisis is at our doorstep. It is literally here. It is literally happening as we speak. And a lot of the panelists today highlighted from their decades of experience working in international organizations at the highest level, the challenges ahead of us. And they said something that I hope every person here has heard loud and clear. It is actually going to be our problem. It's the problem of all of the young people, because the world that you're going to grow in today, unfortunately, is going to be a lot more difficult to live in than the ones your parents or your grandparents grew up in. And so with great challenges come great chances for leadership and chances for innovative thinking. And for me, the journey of actually starting a company called Carbon Base started when I met Greta actually at COP. And I realized that the solution that we were trying to find was not going to come from the generations of people who knew that climate change was a problem and then did nothing. COP is called the Conference of the Parties. And the one I went to was called COP25, which meant that it happened for 25 times. 25 times, 4,000 people flew from all corners of the world to meet together, and sit together and eat together, and basically, in my view, do not enough. And it was only the 21st time that these people met that they were able to even agree on an agreement, the Paris Agreement, which, as though we celebrate it today, is actually way, not enough actually to do anything meaningful for the climate challenge. As one of our speakers said today, the Paris Agreement, as it currently stands, is going to commit us to 3.2 degrees of warming. 3.2 degrees of warming is catastrophic to many countries' ability to host their existing populations. World War II and the Holocaust have usually been talked about as one of the worst things that can happen to a civilization or to a race, to a culture. The total number of people who died in World War II have been estimated to be less than 80, 90 million people. Climate change is going to wipe off hundreds of millions of people before the effects actually settle. And so for those of us lucky to be here today, we are among the educated few who actually have been given incredible opportunity to actually see a world beyond our existing borders. We have actually a chance to participate in virtual space and meet people across the world and hear UN leaders speak to us, right, with words of encouragement. The most of the people who are young in the world are not so lucky. They're not born with the ability to have free internet access, with the ability to have running water, with the ability to have free electricity. They have to meter their ability to access the digital world we take for granted, piece by piece. So that's really our challenge. It's the challenge to be able to understand that we're living in front of a huge speeding train, and this train is not going to stop. In fact, if we pushed 40 years ago, we could have slowed it down dramatically. But now, on the eve of the evening hour of the clock, this train has gathered so much momentum that it's going to cost a miracle and a half. It's going to cost $100 trillion to even have a chance to make a dent in the train, in the speed of the train. And so that's where we are, and I think it's not alarmist by any means. In fact, I think it's actually incredibly important to rationally understand, right, the monumentous task that is ahead of us. And yet, at the same time, I am optimistic. And I'm optimistic because when Greta showed up at COP25, she brought with her out of the woodwork 500,000 people. And this is in December, and this is actually, very cold in Madrid. And so while we're sitting there in the warm of the theater of COP, when the 4,000 delegates, there were 500,000 people who've actually materialized, of their own money, spending their own time to walk with Greta in solidarity all the way down to City Hall from the airport, where basically a conference center was. And it was 100 times more people than had actually been summoned by the existence of COP. And so in that moment, I saw this contrast between the people who were acutely aware that climate change is happening and actually had some power to do something and basically didn't do much of it, and the people who were actually not given any ability of power or recognition, and yet were willing to contribute their own time and ability and effort in all the ways that they can to actually do something useful. And so I chose to believe. I chose to believe that actually the climate change problem was not going to be solved by the people at the top. It was going to be solved by everyone else, all 7 billion people. And so one of the reasons that we decided to look actually at the way we can do things is we came to understand that the fundamental challenges of climate change were going to be contained in the tools and the technology that can summon and mobilize and organize billions of people. This is where technology is going to come from. And magically, there was a technology being born, being matured, slowly growing into infancy, that actually was born of the same motivational core as the problems we face with climate change. And it is the blockchain digital asset revolution. And I tell you why. Because when you look at a system, you have to understand the genesis. The genesis of the system is where the DNA of it is held. And the genesis of the crypto revolution was born in the January 2009. And embedded into the first ever block that Bitcoin ever made was the quote that said, "Chancellor stands on the second bailout of banks." And you have to understand that the global financial crisis, for most people who live in the world, was a major FU. It was a FU in the sense that people who are hardworking, meticulous, saved all of their money, put all of it into the most secure place they thought it should be, and then they were called up one day and told that their money had disappeared. They had vanished into thin air, that people had gambled away their life savings. I had met people in their 60s and 70s who had to come out of retirement to be able to make bread to feed themselves because their entire life savings were wiped out by the small, concentrated decisions of a few people who wanted to make some more money. And so the origin of the whole thing of why do we have digital assets today is not about any of the sort of nefarious activities we care about. It's about the ability to mobilize and organize ourselves without being prey to the very few decision makers at the top who stand to benefit from the ignorance and inaction and vulnerability of the general population of the planet. And so one of the reasons why we wanted to have a blockchain panel here is that we want to highlight the incredible ability for blockchain to address fundamentally the problem that we keep hearing about, the climate justice problem, which is that the people who are paying with their lives for climate change are the ones who emitted no carbon at all. And the people who have actually emitted crazy tons of CO2 are the ones who have fancy planes and nice air conditioning and basically be able to survive the incoming apocalypse uninhibited. So that is the genesis of why I decided to start this company called Carbon-Base. And it's named mostly off the reminder that we're based all on carbon. In the last few months, if not years, carbon has become seen as the enemy. It is seen as the thing we must suck out of the air and inject into the ground in order to stave off our apocalypse. But we are made out of carbon. Carbon is the most vibrant form of organic matter on the planet. And so to me, the inorganic methods of extracting carbon using giant wind turbines is completely missing the point. That is like basically replacing your heart that is growing weak from lack of exercise with a mechanical heart in hopes that it'll keep you alive. You're gonna die a year later. What we need to do is have a homeostatic ability to recognize how do we maintain balance on the planet between the desires of human beings and the carrying capacity of the planet. And the fundamental truth is that there is definitely enough to go around, but not the way that we're spending it. And so the point of all of this is to say that we're living at the cusp of systematic change. This change is not going to come free. It's going to come with the most expensive price tags that we know, which is the loss of the comfort of what we know to be familiar and the desire to create something else. At the same time, for some inexplicable reason, in January 2020, the entire world woke up finally to the fact that we've been procrastinating on our homework for 40 years, and now it's about to be due. And so we are finally seeing the beginnings of the people who have the power and the money starting to take some responsibility of the actions that we need to do. And this is it, guys. Like, to me, the next 7 years of our lives are going to determine the next 200. And so we are going to have to figure out, can we manage this precious, fragile ecosystem that is called Earth, or are we going to perish by our own folly and ignorance and cowardice? The thing is that we don't need money to live. We need air, we need food, and we need water. But somehow we have seen this weird system where people say, I cannot change because it's going to cost me money, because I'm not going to make enough money. And that is totally crazy. It is absolutely, totally crazy. So what I hope to do here with Elliot, with Amir, with every one of you, is to dare to dream that we have the courage and ability to create a better planet for ourselves, for our descendants, and the ability to convince others like ourselves, the other 7 billion people on the planet, of which I think more than half is under the age of 30. Like, this is our test. This is our coming of age story. So I just want to thank again the incredible work that has been put into this conference, the incredible organization that Elliot has done single-handedly, without much support and without much funding, to be able to convene so many brilliant people to come and share their wisdom to us and listen. I've stayed awake all of tonight. It's 5 a.m. in the morning here, listening to the panels we've had, listening to stories being exchanged inside GatherTown. I want to thank GatherTown for hosting us and creating this, Pokemon-like ecosystems, at times both familiar and also surprising. And also Amir for having the courage to dream such a crazy space that's able to contain multitudes of dreams, of visions of the future, having the ISS in close reach with a live view of the planet is absolutely stunning. And I want to thank each and one of you guys for spending your time and your life to come and participate, because participation is the most important aspect of this journey ahead. The quote that I have in my email address that I wake up to every morning is something from Marshall McLuhan, who said, on Spaceship Earth, there are no passengers. We are all crew. And what it means to me is that the responsibility for survival rests inside each and every one of us. So thank you guys very much for coming to the Greenlight conference. We 2 days ago, right before the conference, we were surprised to learn that Secretary Clinton had tweeted about us. And over the last few days, we've had, other numerous people who have volunteered their platform to share this existence of this event. And there were many things that did not work as planned inside this conference, including some of our AV challenges. But what I can see very clearly is that the thing that is most important is in full abundance, which is the reason why we're here. And the road ahead is going to be bumpy. It's going to be a lot more challenging than getting all of us on Zoom together. But I have a lot of confidence that we can do it together. And with that, I want to hand it back to Elliot to say the closing remarks of the 2021 Greenlight Climate Change Conference.